And the topic of the day, I'll just say this, it comes from the game of the week in college football, but it's the game of the week for a different reason than we anticipated it being the game of the week. The game of the week I'm talking about, of course, is Miami at Texas A&M. And when I say it's different as to why it is actually the game of the week, it really shows us why we love college football the way that we do. Because what we thought this was going to be the game of the week, and it was going to be this great celebration of college football. Night game, Saturday, Kyle Field, top 15 matchup between Miami and Texas A&M under the lights in College Station in Kyle Field. That was what we thought it was going to be. College game day was going to be there. It was going to be incredible. It's going to be the celebration of college football. Instead, what it is it's the celebration of why we really love college football, which is that on any Saturday, anything can happen. And on last Saturday, it all happened at Texas A&M, whereas we all know by now, Texas A&M took a terrible loss to App State. Now, to be clear, and we already went over it on Monday, so I'm not going to go through all of the gory details. When I say they took an inexcusable loss to App State, that's not a knock on App State. Great program, great coach, great players. But when you're Texas A&M, when you're in year 5 of the Jimbo Fisher era, not only can you not lose to App State, you cannot lose in the fashion that you did. Scoring 14 points total, including just 7 points on offense. They did get a kickoff return for a touchdown and under 200 yards of total offense, as I said, against the team that gave up 500 plus yards against North Carolina a week before at home. And so I do believe that because of what happened with App State last week, this is still the game of the week, but it's the game of the week for a different reason. And I think it's the single biggest talking point in college football coming into this week with the single biggest narrative. And that narrative to me is pretty straightforward. I believe there is no program in college football right now that has more pressure on it than Texas A&M. And I believe there is no coach in college football that has more pressure on him than Jimbo Fisher. And now, be really quick before we get into this game, and I do want to preview the game itself and all that. To be clear, when I say there's pressure on Jimbo Fisher, and I'm using air quotes for people who can't watch on YouTube, I don't mean pressure as in like, if he loses the job, if he loses this game, he's going to get fired. Like, no, that's not what I'm talking about at all. And anyone who is saying that is a complete knucklehead, okay? Jimbo Fisher is owed $80+ million on the remainder of his contract. He did just finish number 5 in the country 2 seasons ago, nearly made the playoff. And oh, by the way, he signed the number 1 recruiting class in the history of college football, in case you hadn't heard. Wink, wink, nod, nod. We all have heard that. And so even if it cratered out, even if it was a complete disaster, I think he'd get till next year to try and coach up all those 5 stars that he brought in. Now, how many of them would stay is a different conversation, but Jimbo Fisher's job's not on the line. But his credibility is on the line. His entire livelihood, his entire, I guess you would say, trajectory of the program is on the line. And you know how I know that Jimbo Fisher is feeling pressure? All you had to do was watch Jimbo Fisher's press conference after the App State game. Listen, I'm not going to credit a coach for taking arrows after a really, really, really bad loss, after a loss at home as a 17-point home favorite when you had less than 200 yards. But 2 things stood out to me that Jimbo Fisher said in that press conference. What he said was, I'm willing to give up play calling duties if this will help the team. And also, I'm willing to make a quarterback change if it is going to help the team. And so why I bring it up, I don't think he's giving up play calling duties. We'll talk about the quarterback in a minute. But that commentary alone tells me exactly what I just said. The heat is on Jimbo Fisher. And I do believe that he realizes, wait a second now, the goodwill I have from the 9-1 2020 season, the goodwill I have from beating Alabama last year, the goodwill I have from the 2022 recruiting class, it is officially gone. It is officially go time. I got to get to work. And I think we all know why he has to get to work, because if he were to lose this game, I'm just going to tell you this right now. It would be the biggest story. It would leave Monday's Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. But think about the ramifications of if Texas A&M were to lose this game and why there is so much pressure on Jimbo Fisher. In my opinion, it's for 2 reasons. One, it's because the schedule doesn't get easier after this, right? You open with 3 home games, FCS Sam Houston, App State, Miami. This is actually the easy part of the schedule. Now, Miami might be a little bit ahead of schedule with Mario Cristobal, but this was supposed to be the easy part. So if you lose this game, I think we all know what's coming up for Texas A&M, but it isn't pretty, okay? After this game for Texas A&M, here's the schedule. They play Arkansas and Dallas next week in the Southwest Classic. They lost that one last year. They play at Mississippi State a week after that. Remember, Mississippi State beat them at Kyle Field last year. They play at Alabama the week after that. And so what we're talking about is the next 3 games, they have 0 games at home, 2 against top 25 teams, 2 against top 10 teams because Arkansas is in the top 10 right now. And the third game is against Mississippi State, who beat you last year. I should mention they get a bye and then they play South Carolina on the road, which means that they don't even get a home game after this week until the end of October, almost a full calendar month until the next home game after this. And it's not as though the schedule gets easy after that. They would still have Ole Miss, they would still have Auburn, they would still have LSU, and they have Florida in a cross-division game. And so why this game is so important, there are no nights off in the SEC West, and that is why you have to get back on track. And I would also just say this in general. The other reason you have to get back on track, that transfer portal is a cruel temptress if you start going on a losing streak. And I do think this is because the transfer portal is so new. I think this is one of these things that people haven't really considered. I think we all kind of understand, like, if a coach gets fired, guys are going to enter the portal. If a coach gets hired and it's just not the right fit, a player is going to enter the portal. How about if things go sideways on the field? The possibility that all these 5 stars that you've signed, not just in this class, previous class, but multiple classes before it, they can all look around. They don't have to sit through a 5-7 year or a 6-6 year. Now, because of changes to the rules, they can't enter right now, right away. But I still bring it up to say there could, if this falls apart, it could fall apart and you could lose some guys. And so as I look to Saturday, no one has more pressure on him than Jimbo Fisher. And I will tell you, in terms of this game, the single most interesting thing to me about this game is not who starts at quarterback for Jimbo Fisher and Texas A&M, but who finishes it. It is going to be fascinating to me because I don't believe that Haynes King is the guy at quarterback. And so because of the loss to App State, because of how bad the offense looked, because of the fact that Jimbo Fisher has readily admitted that he is willing to make a quarterback change, that is the most interesting conversation to me. Because look, what I'll just say is this really quick on Haynes King. Listen, you know that I don't like to criticize 18, 19, 20-year-old kids, but he is now in year 3 in the program. By the way, this is the NIL era. You're getting money. You're getting paid. You got to perform. I hate to say it. And this is now his 3rd year in the program. He has started 3 games against Kent State, Sam Houston State, and App State. 5 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. He's not the guy. And not only is he not the guy, but the season is on the brink now after App State. I just told you what the schedule ahead is. And Texas A&M is one of the few schools in America that has a quarterback room where they can actually go to a backup or even a 3rd-string guy and get solid production. The backup is Max Johnson, last year's starter at LSU, who won games in the SEC, including against Texas A&M last year. The 3rd-string guy is Connor Wegman, the 5-star quarterback in the 2022 class that everybody thinks is the future. And so to me, I just don't think Jimbo Fisher has time to mess around. And if Haynes King even starts, and as I record, nothing is official yet, there's no official news that he won't start, I think it's only going to take a bad series or 2 before we go ahead and see the move made. And so as we look forward to Saturday, that's the most interesting thing. I will say, by the way, Texas A&M, a 5.5-point favorite in the Betfred Sportsbook. So Vegas likes Texas A&M. Really quickly, what I would say from the other perspective, from Miami, I'm just fascinated to see what's going on at Miami. They've been off the radar. They beat Bethune-Cookman. They beat Southern Miss. They didn't play very well against Southern Miss themselves. And what's especially interesting about them, now they did win comfortably against Southern Miss, but they were actually down in the second quarter. I think it was 10-7 at halftime. They came back to take the lead right before half. But I'll say this as far as this game is concerned. The pressure is on Jimbo. The pressure is on Texas A&M. I am genuinely curious to see Miami at Kyle Field under the lights. Miami has a really high-profile quarterback named Tyler Van Dyke. What's really interesting about him, though, he actually came into the fold late last year when Miami had basically been eliminated from everything. Remember, last year, Miami opened with Alabama, get destroyed. Miami played Michigan State in week 3, lose at home. Their starting quarterback at the time, De'Aaron King, gets hurt. All of a sudden, it allows them to go to the backup, Tyler Van Dyke. He looks really good, but he has never been in a situation like what he will see at Kyle Field Saturday night against Texas A&M. So what I will say, do think Jimbo has the most pressure. I do kind of like this spot for Texas A&M, and it's crazy, right? Because I do think there's a scenario. I think everybody would say, Torres, you're just picking Texas A&M to be to be counterintuitive and to go against what everybody else says. I completely disagree. One, I do think we're going to get a quarterback change. Two, I think we're going to get an inspired Texas A&M team, and I do think part of the frustration with Jimbo Fisher with Texas A&M is the fact that they haven't come out focused and locked in every single game, every single week. Last year, again, lose at home to Mississippi State, easily could have lost to Colorado in a road neutral site game in Denver. And then, of course, you lose to App State in a game that you sleepwalk through. Well, I think we get the best version of Texas A&M on Saturday. I think we potentially get a different quarterback. And I think we've seen what Texas A&M looks like on a Saturday night coming off a bad loss when they are locked in. We saw it last year against Alabama. It was a win against the Crimson Tide. And so I do believe that Texas A&M is going to find a way to win this game. My official Betfred prediction, the spread again is 5.5. I'll say Texas A&M 24, Miami 14. I do think a lot of those five-star defensive linemen that Texas A&M signed last year show up to play. That defense has been good too, by the way. That defense has been really good, and so I am very intrigued. But Texas A&M, Miami is the game of the week. I really do think Texas A&M wins, but I'll also say this. If they lose, can you imagine what Monday's Aaron Torres podcast is going to be like? Can you imagine what Saturday night in College Station is going to be like? It is going to be hectic. It is going to be crazy. So keep an eye out for that.